There's a study called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, and it's the longest longitudinal study of health and happiness of individuals that's ever been done. A longitudinal study is one that's been done over multiple years, and this study in particular has been running for over 85 years. When they initially began the research, the hope was to understand what the recipe was for general happiness and health and success. I mean, how great would that be if we could figure out that formula? But it's followed over 720 male participants and more than 1,300 of their descendants. The reason I'm giving you all of these details is so that you can understand the magnitude of how big and how important the findings are from this study. Because the main thing that they took away from this research was relationships, and how relationships are basically everything to us as humans. They are the key to healthy aging in context of the study. And what it showed was that healthy relationships were the biggest predictor of life satisfaction, outpacing social class, wealth, fame, IQ, genetics, all of it. They also found that relationship satisfaction had a direct positive impact on physical health. And now you know why I'm talking about this, because of how healthy relationships can have an impact on the other buckets of our life. You know I love talking about impact and how to have a consistent positive impact in our life. Now, I hate doing this part, but if I don't, you've got no reason to trust anything I'm about to say. I'm Steph Saffer. I'm a certified executive coach. I spent years working one-on-one with clients on exactly these types of issues and topics. And before that, I spent 16 years in the clinic as an acupuncturist, listening to people's real lives up close. Relationships and loneliness are a part of the lived experience that we have to talk about. Robert Waldinger is the fourth and current director of the study. He did a TED Talk probably about 10 years ago now, called What Makes a Good Life? Lessons from the Longest Study on Happiness. And it's been viewed over 50 million times. He talks about how the quality of our relationships predicts our health when we get into our 70s and our 80s. And just to reiterate, his critical point was that the single greatest predictor of physical health at age 80 was the relationship satisfaction we felt at age 50. I'm age 44, so I'm hoping that in 6 years, I'm experiencing tremendous relationship health. He also described the epidemic of loneliness that people experience and how loneliness can be toxic to people. Even though somebody is in a marriage, or maybe they're in friendships with lots of different people, if they are experiencing loneliness, their overall health declines. And this is true for the brain as well. Our brains are healthier when we are in connected, loving relationships, as opposed to relationships where there is a lot of conflict or being in situations where you're experiencing a lot of loneliness. Now, why do we think any of this is important? Beyond the obvious, that health is something we can probably agree that we all value, something I thought about when I watched this TED Talk years ago was how it's not just about finding good people to be around, it's also about being a good person to be around. And it's also about finding ways to facilitate good connection and maintain it consistently. I think it's really interesting to observe what's happening in the world right now. Obviously, I talk about this a lot on my podcast, on this YouTube channel, and it's a reflection of how much I'm thinking about this. But despite the fact that we are so connected technologically, people are still reporting record high rates of loneliness in U.S. society. And I'm really curious to understand the rates of loneliness on a global scale. Why is that? Why do people feel lonely even though they're still talking to people or even though they're seeing them on the screen? It's because you can't deny the fact that we are social beings wired for connection. And that connection is best served when we are looking at somebody in the eyeballs, in person, when we are in the presence of people that we love, hearing each other's laughters, when we're talking, when we're face to face and we're engaged in active listening. It's not just an interaction, it's an experience. That's what makes true connection. We saw a lot of this happening in real time during COVID. If you had a grandparent who lived alone, you knew this firsthand. The fear of seeing them decline in their health because they were so lonely and isolated. I remember my grandmother, she was independently living before COVID. And so when COVID hit, she was quarantined by herself. And we were so incredibly worried about her because we were actually seeing her health decline pretty rapidly in a matter of months during that first year of COVID. It got to the point where we had to figure out how we could be around her so that my family could lift her up and support her so that she was okay. I remember when the Surgeon General at the time was Vivek Murthy. He came out with a report on loneliness. It was 2023, and he outlined how connected we were from a digital standpoint. I think he said there was 99% of people under the age of 65 that were using the internet. But also in his report, he went on to describe that there was a battle for our attention. And when technology wins and gets our attention, rates of isolation and loneliness increase. And I don't know if you've ever heard of something that they were calling the friendship recession, but it was also in Vivek's report. And it was about rates of loneliness increasing in young adults, theoretically driven by the fact that teens and young adults are spending less time with their friends in person than they did decades ago. They're spending time with their friends online. They're texting and sending Snapchat and whatever else the trend is dictating, but they're not spending time in person in the way that they used to. And if you're somebody who's raised in the 80s and the 90s like me, you feel this change. My wife and I talk about this all the time, how we yearn for those older days when people would just go and hang out with each other. I think there's a lot to be said about this topic, and you'll hear me probably elaborating on this more in future YouTube episodes. But I wanted to set the foundation to have you thinking about what it looks like for you when it comes to the quality of your relationships in your life. What kind of time do you spend investing in your key friendships or relationships? Do you have mentors or people that support you in your growth, in your work? Do you have people who you get to share the weight of life with? People who just get it, who don't judge you, who are with you through thick and thin? Do you put time into nurturing those connections? Do you plan things with people? Or do you just wait at home for something to happen? Do you proactively set aside time to connect with people? Or is your focus primarily on optimizing other areas of your life, like work or wealth or whatever it might be? Do you spend a lot of time online, connected digitally, but not in real life? I ask these questions because I honestly don't think that many people intentionally plan ahead for their relationships. What I've observed in working with hundreds of clients and thousands of patients as an acupuncturist is that the time to connect with people is typically what goes to the back burner or gets cut when life gets busy. But if we listen to Robert Waldinger report on the longest study in health and happiness ever to be done, it's that the wealth isn't what creates the health and happiness when you're older. It's not the fame or the influence or the IQ. It's not the accolades or the achievements that you had at work. And while all those things are wonderful and necessary, it's a part of this lived experience. It's very clear to me that we might have things a little mixed up here in terms of where our focus goes. I think there are very few people who lay in bed at the end of their life and think to themselves, God, I wish I would have worked more. Or, man, I wish I would have spent more time on the internet. Nobody does that. And to me, this is a good perspective check. It's a good level-setting conversation to think about, because if we don't take control of our calendar, our time, and where we invest, life will just push us around and do it for us. I'm sure you've felt that in your own life. So I leave you with those questions. The main question being, how much time are you investing in the people you care about in your life? If you want to be a part of our community, these are the kinds of conversations that we have around growth and self-development and just personally trying to live the best life that you absolutely can. And if you want to put this idea into practice beyond just a YouTube video, that's the work that I do with people. Comment the word YouTube in an email to me at steph@stephsaffer.com, and we'll set up a time for us to discuss whether or not coaching would be a good fit for you. Until next time, thank you for watching, and thank you for being ready to impact, my friend.